Hi everyone, I'm here in the great outdoors, and I'm gonna yap to you about something that has been on my mind for a little bit now, and I only now have gotten the courage to talk about it. I'm gonna be spilling the tea about what it's like growing up Asian in rural America while drinking boba tea. I got myself a sweet little treat because I don't think I could handle this conversation without one, okay? What is this? This is a Thai tea boba, okay? We're gonna get through this. For context, I grew up in rural Pennsylvania, and that location. Oh, wait, before I get into this, let me quickly shout out how beautiful it is. There's a fountain behind me. Hello? So, I grew up in rural Pennsylvania, and that location is not particularly known for their Asian representation. The two communities I interacted with the most were church and also school. And I think between those two communities, I could count with both hands how many Asians there were. And that includes all of Asia, not just Filipino like me. That includes India, that includes Vietnamese, Chinese, it's all of Asia. And considering the fact that Asia takes up 60% of the world population, the fact that in my location, there's less than 2% of that population represented by Asians, it was a little bit weird growing up. But what was odd about growing up in my specific high school was that we were considered one of the more diverse schools in the area. In my school, it was about a third white, a third black, and a third Latino, and then that little 1%, negligible, was Native American and Asian. Oh, wait, this is so sweet. This is my first time trying it. Ooh, it's not good. Ooh, this is not yummy. Anyways, I'm still gonna drink it. I think growing up in this environment, there was a big advantage in that I got the opportunity to celebrate a lot of different cultures that I probably wouldn't have had the opportunity to in another school in that area. I got exposure to a lot of really strong Latino and Black students that had a very, very clear political mindset. And while sometimes I would disagree with that mindset, it was really interesting to hear their perspective and be in an environment where I really felt like those perspectives were celebrated. I think it's rare in the area that I grew up in to have a celebrated Black and Latino community. And while there are still improvements that could be made, absolutely, and I'm really grateful that I had that opportunity so young to be exposed to so many really cool people. My high school was very much understanding of this diversity. High schools around us kind of understood that we are kind of out of the norm in our racial makeup. But oddly enough, even though there was not much Asian representation, this diversity intimidated other schools. I think I could say that for a fact. We'd often get called ghetto, and also because our school had some gang activity, which is so odd to say because we grew up in the middle of the woods, middle of nowhere, nothing happened. So very strange, but that's the truth. So I would say that our school prided ourselves in our diversity, but celebrated, I would kind of argue against the word celebrated because I did not, as an Asian, felt celebrated in the school. In our school, we never celebrated anything like Ramadan, Eid, Chinese New Year. The most acknowledgement that I would get would be in May, when in the morning announcements they would say, Happy AAPI month. And then that's it. We would get that Instagram post or that morning announcement shout out, and then that would be it. This felt frustrating to me as a child, and I know it sounds childish, but it almost felt like I did not deserve to get acknowledged when so much emphasis would be put on other minorities. And this was definitely a childish way of thinking, because it pits other minorities against each other, and that is not healthy or a way for us to move forward. And again, it is completely childish, but in my defense, I was literally a child growing up in the school system. So I feel like I have the right to feel a little bit childish there. Yeah, growing up, I experienced some pretty screwed up racism, just straight up racism. I got called chink. I got called ching chong ling long, ling ling do my nails. I got called yellow face. In the school cafeteria, my food got made fun of because it smelled weird or looked too Asian. in grade school especially, a lot of kids would like do this with their eyes, and then they would say that they looked like me. I remember one time, it was kind of early in the morning, and these girls, I guess they just woke up, and they were looking at themselves in their phones, and they were saying like, oh, ew, like, why do my eyes look like that? I look so Asian. Which is like, me too, you know, get in line. I wake up every morning and I look Asian, you know? Those are some of the experiences that I had. I recently went through my old high school Google Drive. I saw this narrative essay. I reread it. Honestly, it's super sad and disheartening. I'll include a link to it in the description. Don't read it if you're not in a place to read about that kind of stuff. It is pretty sad. But a lot of the racism that I kind of incurred wasn't just like straight up like, you're Asian and I hate you. It was also multi-layered, more complex, and always, it was rooted in a seed of ignorance. Not necessarily always mean-spirited ignorance, but just ignorance. People weren't really aware of how to address me. And of course, that's a bit large part in due to the fact that there was not an Asian community to hold other people accountable for how we're supposed to talk. And the weird representation of Asians in the media at the time. So we're talking early 2000s, 2010s era. So I went through a lot of racism. You could read more into that essay if you kind of want to know how I felt. I don't really want to explore that feeling right now. But I also can acknowledge now that I'm like out of that environment, the blanket statement of, I grew up in rural Pennsylvania and it was the worst because everyone was racist. I think that's too dichotomous of a way to describe my experience. When in fact there were several like gray areas that were kind of difficult to pinpoint that I'm going to try to like navigate today. I still am very small. I've got a chirpsy little voice and I am very energetic. And this is something I love about myself. And oftentimes I would get called cute. And this is an adjective that I really, really loved. Being called cute inherently, I don't think anyone calls someone cute with intention of putting someone down. I got called cute a lot, and I took it as a compliment, and it was meant as a compliment. And let's not deny ourselves the fact that I am in fact cute. I am super adorable, and I love that. I'm a cutesy patootsy, dude. I'm a cutesy patootsy. And when people called me cute back then, I ate it up because it was a sweet little compliment, right? And I still kind of eat it up when people call me cute. But there are times when people would call me cute and it would feel infantilizing and almost derogatory. I think the weirdest part about being called cute is when someone who was junior to me would come up to me and be like, they squish my cheeks and they squeeze me and they're like, oh, you're so cute. But I am older than you and I'm almost like an adult. Like at the time when that kind of stuff was happening, I was 16, 17, 18. The people that were doing it to me were 14, 15, 16. You know, that was a little weird that I got called cute like that. I don't really have an elegant way to put it. It just felt derogatory sometimes. And I know that it wasn't meant to be mean-spirited, and it isn't nearly as bad as like the other slurs that people would call me. But this was an adjective that I got called a lot. And something that I appreciated, but also on one hand, it felt demoralizing sometimes, as if I can't achieve like this other level of beauty, like conventional beauty. I will always just be cute. This might have to go with the fact that a lot of Asian men in the media are depicted as demasculated, like bumbling idiots, nerdy kind of guys that aren't ever going to achieve that level of swagger that maybe is conventional of like a traditional American lead. Calling me cute, I would never achieve what that standard of American beauty is. There's this scene in Minari. Minari is this movie with Steven Yeun, and it's about this Korean family immigrating to America and starting a farm. And there's a scene where the family goes to a church. It's very patronizing the way that the churchgoers address them. Even though it's meant to be welcoming, it felt patronizing to be like, oh, there's an Asian family now here, and that's super cool. And they use the word cute to describe their family, which, again, meant to be a compliment, but feels patronizing in a way. I hope I still get called cute because I think I'm super adorable. I think I'm super, super cute. I really don't have anything super eloquent to say about this, but yeah, I got called cute a lot, and sometimes it got weird. And I don't know if it's an Asian thing, maybe it's just a me thing, but it was weird. I got really, really good at school, and I went sicko mode when it came to school. I did 8 AP classes, and if it wasn't AP, I was doing an honors class. And on top of the rigorous academics that I was taking, I took myself very seriously in extracurricular activities. I did student council, theater, marching band, jazz band, Odyssey of the Mind, all of it. I really piled it on. Why was I doing it? Was it for the right reasons? Was it because I wanted to explore my passions and really see my limitations? Or was it for reasons that were really unhealthy? And I've come to the conclusion that a lot of it was really unhealthy. So in a lot of typical American media at the time, Asians were seen as the smart ones. I'm not naturally smart in that I had to spend a lot of time in high school and in college sitting down and putting my head down in a book and studying. In Asian culture, like, there's this big thing where you just put your head down and you work. And you don't really speak up, you don't talk out. You should put your head down and you do the work. And that was really the mentality that I took. A lot of kids would see my success and say, oh, she got a 5 on the exam because she's Asian. But they didn't see the hours of studying that went behind that. So in order to keep up with the perception that Asian people are smart, I really worked hard in school. And at the time, I didn't have enough exposure with other people in the Asian community. So I felt the way to connect to my heritage was to do well academically. And it sounds crazy saying it now, but that's the truth. I studied hard so I could feel Asian. And when I didn't do well in school, that meant that I wasn't Asian enough. When I went to college and I chose like rigorous classes and loaded my schedule up in a rigorous way, or in a way that was like really competitive or difficult, I thought I could handle it, but I couldn't, and I got burnt out fast. And this caused the whole dilemma of like, do I really like school, or am I just doing this to validate my culture? Another big reason why I worked hard in school was because I had something to prove. I worked hard in school so I could have a seat at the table. In Asian culture, a big thing is putting your head down and doing the work, and doing it silently. So you go after school, you do your work, you stay up late, you do the studying, yada, yada, yada. You eat, you pray, you study, and you do it all in silence. And you climb that corporate ladder, you climb that academic ladder, and you do all those actions in hopes that you prove that you earned a seat at the table. I did it not just to prove that I earned a seat at the table, I also did it to own the table, right? I wanted to be able to say that this is my world. This was something that I also got in college when I looked at like the people who sexually harassed me, and I thought back about all the kids that were racist to me in school. I wanted to own the table. I wanted to own the corporate setting that we eventually would land on. You want to see smart? You want to see smart Asian? Well, look at me now. And I wanted all of them to be my subordinate. I wanted them to look at me and see how far I've risen. And I wanted them to know that you'll be nothing more than a racist kid and a cat-calling idiot. This is definitely not healthy. I'm still trying to get this rage out of my system. And also, it's not fair to myself to be essentially doing all of my hard work for them, when I should be doing my hard work for the people I love and the people that respected me. Now that I'm in like a career setting, I'm still at a point where I'm trying to understand, where does the motivation to work come from, if not from rage? Is it from love? I'm not sure yet. We're still figuring it out. Okay, we're standing up for this portion. I remember one time when I was in student council, I was selling these tickets for a fundraiser. And I went up to an administrator. So this wasn't a teacher, but this was a member of the administrative board. She happened to be a woman of color. I went up to her asking her if she wanted to buy some tickets. And she said, yep, I'll buy some tickets from you, and I'll leave the money in your advisor's room, and I'll tell her that the quote little Chinese girl was the one who I sold the tickets to. This was frustrating in several levels because one, I'm Filipina, and also like she was a minority, so like dog, we're on the same team. This also felt frustrating because at the time I was staying after school probably till 6, 9 p.m. We got into school around 7. I would stay until 9 p.m. And I was really working hard academically and in my extracurriculars. So I thought that the impression that I'd leave on the school board was stronger than just the little Chinese girl. Little I am, Chinese I'm not. Nothing wrong with being Chinese, it's just I'm just not Chinese. If you asked me in high school and even early college if I was angry at this administrator, I would say yes. I was extremely frustrated at the fact that, like, it seems like faculty and staff don't have the amount of respect to even call me by the race that I am. But here's the deal. Being an educator is absolutely impossible. You're underpaid. You're understaffed. You have to navigate new technology like AI. You have to navigate through different societal issues. You have to be a social worker. You have to be kind. And also you have to navigate through like school shootings. The list goes on. And then after you do that, you still have to teach your kids what a subject and predicate is in a sentence. It is a miracle that there are even educators that are willing to show up to school nowadays. An educator's job is impossible. Frankly, it's impossible. There were several times faculty and staff would call me Oriental. It was definitely frustrating, and I'm still frustrated that I was called that. But now that I've kind of stepped away from it, I kind of feel like the fact that they were even able to show up to school that day was a miracle. On top of that, as I mentioned before, there wasn't a large Asian community in my neighborhood, in my environment. So how are they going to pick up the skills or the tools to be able to address me in a way that's respectful when the only like exposure they have to Asian people is the television or online? And at the time, that representation was not adequate. When I acknowledged the lofty social issues that faculty and staff had to navigate, like my frustration has kind of lessened to be like, okay, there's other things you need to think about. But also, I think it's fair to say those experiences were frustrating, yes. And now that I think back and have this newfound confidence in like myself and in my race, I wish that I could go back to that administrator and go back to that time. And when she told me that little Chinese girl, I would have the confidence to say like, hey, I'm not Chinese, I'm actually Filipino. But I didn't have that confidence back then. And I wish that I had the mental maturity to address the teachers that called me Oriental and say like, hey, Oriental is a problematic way to address me. Just call me Asian American. But I did not have the confidence in myself or in my racial identity to address those kind of issues. And frankly, as a student, my job was to be educated. My mindset was on being educated, not necessarily educating the educators. I don't think it's irrational to feel frustrated about the way that we were addressed or when people ask me where am I from. But I wish things were handled differently, and I wish that I didn't have to experience that. When I went to college, I got exposed to the Asian and Filipino community that I was craving for. And that was super cool and a big blessing. There was not only a prominent Asian community, but there was a club dedicated for Filipinos, which is a concept so foreign to me. I got to see more Filipinos in one location than I ever have since visiting the Philippines, which was something that was so healing for me. And even being able to speak Tagalog to other people who aren't directly related to me, I was just speaking Tagalog because they understood my language. That healed my heart in a way. It was really wonderful. And on top of that, in college, I had 3 incredible Filipino roommates, and we would eat Jollibee and Filipino food all the time. Imagine failing, completely bombing a final, and then your roommate makes you turon. And then we watch She's Dating a Gangster. So good, dude. So good. I'm so grateful for the community that I was exposed to. Another big thing that kind of opened my eyes about like what is true celebrated diversity was when Eid and Ramadan season would come around. I feel like when Eid would come around, it was like the whole campus was supporting those who were fasting. And there was a moment in the day where, like, right at sunset, when the campus would fall kind of silent. Because I feel like a third of the students would roll out their mats and pray. I mean, it was just so beautiful to witness that and kind of helped me realize that the world is so much bigger than whatever my hometown presented it as. It took a while for me to see being Asian American as anything but a disadvantage. But being exposed to that kind of community, it really changed my perspective. It made me think about being a Filipino as not just like how you are academically or even religiously, like what kind of God you follow, but it made me think about being Filipino as like years and years of perseverance and food and music and like love and hospitality, and being exposed to a Filipino community was what really healed me. And I'm still struggling with my racial identity, but that was really something that helped me. The big thing that got me through it all was community. Finding places where you could be 100% authentic and yourself is rare and should be treasured. And I think that in my development from kindergarten to 12th grade in my hometown, it was so critical that I found these places. It was rare, but I found little corners of the school where I really, really found my people. And maybe they didn't see or understand what it was like to be Asian, but they still saw me for me and celebrated that. I think I owe in big part to my school's music and art program. The teachers and students in those programs made me feel like my identity was beyond just student and Asian, but also I was a musician. You know, I was a friend, I was an artist, I was funny. And having that kind of supportive community really helped me like find the courage to keep going and explore more parts of myself. Finding an Asian community growing up was hard. Of course, I had my family and they were huge. They were the only people that I could speak Tagalog to. And I had my extended family too that were huge. But I think the biggest Asian community that I had was the online community. Nikahika, Kev Jumbo, Wongfu Productions, but specifically Ki Hong Lee, Animal Gal, Best Dressed, Happy Slip.
No, Mom.
Like these are all YouTubers I grew up with. They played a huge role in like the way that I view what Asians can be in American media. If you asked me a couple years ago if I would grow up anywhere else, my answer would be yes, absolutely. But now that I've grown up a little bit, I think my honest answer is no. Growing up in my environment was definitely tough. And I feel for any Asian kid out there who is growing up in an environment similar to what I grew up in, because it is tough. But honestly, with the avenue of the internet, hopefully things are easier, and definitely like the social tides are shifting. It's not so uncommon to see Asian people on American television shows now. If you were to ask me, would I grow up anywhere else? The honest answer would be no. I made so many valuable connections and had so many beautiful experiences that I wouldn't trade the world for. I grew up in a really beautiful area. I got to see the leaves change color every October. I got to bask in the sun. I got to hear the cicadas chirp. I got to see deer frolic in the woods, and I got to witness winters so cold and so quiet that you could hear the snow fall down. That doesn't even address the people that I grew with. I got to grow up in a marching band. I got to grow up in band rooms with marching band teachers that played pranks on me and band nerds that listened to way too much DCI. I got to grow up with art teachers that loved drag queens and hid a Keurig in the back just in case you needed a midday pick-me-up. I got to grow up in classrooms that were filled with underdogs and dreamers and churches with pierogi sundaes. I mean, I really grew up in a place that was beautiful. I know this might not be a popular opinion for a lot of other Asian folk. If I could run as far away from it as I can, I would. And I don't blame that perspective at all, because frankly, the kind of stuff that we went through was tough. But when I reflect on those experiences, the people I met, the little world that I had, I got to grow up with people so wonderful, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. So there's that. Hopefully I addressed it all. I mean, being Asian is really tough, but ultimately being Asian, it's one of the best superpowers you can have. And I'm so, happy that I'm Asian. And it took a while for me to be able to say that, but it's the God honest truth. Being Asian is so part of my identity now. And it took some time, but I love it. And I hope that if there's any other kid who's growing up Asian alone, you're not. You're not alone. You got 60% of the population backing you up. And I hope you find the community that you need. Okay, so there's that. Okay, that's done. Hopefully that ended up good.